We are currently at a stage of AI evolution where we're at good enough, and that's a very dangerous place to be.
We saw the CEO of Lovable, and you saw some folks from Replit.
They have amazing stories about the prototyping, but if they were honest, they would have said that's where it ends and we're not able to deliver that last 10%. That wasn't acknowledged. In fact, they tried to brush over it.
Have you seen the robots here? One is very humanoid. Then there was another one that was more of like R2-D2, but with arms, and it was doing like the Macarena or something. I'm like, okay, we've taught robots the Macarena. Visa, they were talking about, non-ironically talking about Web3. I was frankly shocked to hear that phrase uttered on the keynote stage. This is me. I stopped by their booth. Fundamentally, I think what creators need is like to get paid well for what they do, because it's really not easy. Subscribe and like. I love that the app encourages you to send messages to people like Maria Sharapova, like she's going to like respond to me, which is very. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're playing tennis in the morning. Yeah, you should come. we need a fourth for doubles. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, here we are at the Croissant Studio at Web Summit. This is the nice spot that I found to record. I'm here with my new friend Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom from D13 AI. We are a software consultancy based out of the UK, Birmingham. We help non-technical innovators to understand what the power of software can do for their business.
We need an AI strategy. Everyone has an AI strategy. What's our AI strategy?
Sometimes people come and say we need 3 AIs. I've heard it's AI or die. We need 3 AIs. Tell me what we need. And a lot of the time they're looking for solutions before they understand the problem. So we are able to sit down, understand their business in detail, identify those problems at the source, and then define a really strong strategy of how to deploy software. It might be off-the-shelf software, it might be bespoke software. How do you deploy software to solve that problem?
So Maria Sharapova, actually, she's here for IBM. We saw her on stage the very first night. That was very much sponsored content. IBM paid a lot of money. They have a very, very, very large booth here. And they were talking about AI in the most unspecific way possible. Maria Sharapova, who I believe is using it and doing interesting things, but when she was asked what, she was like, well, I look at it, I'm a new mom, I look at it to find recipes or healthy ways to serve my kids food. Which, okay, fine, like it can help do that. I wouldn't say that's its like superpower. And then the CEO of Time Magazine, Time Incorporated, who was interviewing her, said, I use it because I'm not that great at math, and I really rolled my eyes at that because that's not what generative AI was ever built for and famously bad at. What have been your impressions? I know you've also been a little frustrated by some lack of specificity.
Yeah, absolutely. I come here to understand what the next wave is, what's happening, and 90% of the content at the conference has been AI, and that's unsurprising really, but it's all been very much at a high level, almost at such a high level that it doesn't really make sense. And I think that's one of the big problems that I've found is that I know a lot about AI, but when people are talking about it, it almost confuses it because of the lack of detail. And I think that may be because a lot of people don't have the understanding themselves.
Well, AI itself is a very broad term, right? I mean, I've had one guest, she wrote the book Empire of AI, and her analogy is saying AI is like saying transportation, right? It could be a rocket ship, it could be a bicycle, those are both transportation, and now everybody, AI is code for generative AI, but there's a lot of other less environmentally egregious, easier to deploy, not as sexy right now, but extremely useful forms of AI, like credit card fraud and things like that, or spam detection. So we saw the CEO of Lovable on opening night. I think you saw some folks from Replit. I saw the CEO of Glean talk. What were some of the specific things that you might have picked up that were new to you?
So with the vibe coding, with the Lovable and Replit, we've been using that in our business for a while, and I think it's amazing what you can do with it. I think that the power of the speed and the ability to get to 50% of the way there very quickly is amazing for people with ideas of how software can be deployed. Now that might be existing companies that are looking to improve processes. It may be startup founders that have got a brand new idea and want to get something and test it in the market. And it's absolutely amazing for that. I was really impressed actually with some of the use cases and examples that were being given by the CEOs. There was some Brazilian kids that put together an application, £3 million was it that they were turning over in the first 2 days or something like that. And I think that's it's amazing, right? And I think that when you have success like that, the next steps are easy. But when you're a company that maybe have proven something out and turned over $10,000-$20,000 in the first 3 months, then where do you go next? You have queues of customers saying, yeah, I like what you're doing, but it needs to do this, it needs to work, otherwise we're going to leave and go somewhere else. And so the people that have kind of proven their concept at that level, they don't have the revenue or the funding to be able to say, okay, well, let's build this properly. And I think that one of the things that struck me with the vibe coding companies was they didn't acknowledge that. They have amazing stories about the prototyping, and they have amazing stories about what it can do for kind of speed and being able to test ideas. But if they were honest, they would have said that's where it ends, and we're not able to deliver that last 10%. It's never going to be production code, and if you go into production with it, then you're going to end up with security vulnerabilities, you're going to end up with unmaintainable code, and when people ask for new things, it's going to be a real struggle to deliver. That wasn't acknowledged. In fact, they tried to brush over it. There was a question for the Replit CEO about technical debt, and my big kind of thing is, well, the very nature of vibe coding, you're building from scratch and changing your mind like many times. Each time you put a new prompt in, it's like changing your mind. And as a software developer, when a product owner changes their mind, technical debt gets built in. And so this whole thing is just a whole raft of technical debt that's going to stop this software from being maintainable going forwards. And when he was asked about that, his response was, well, the existing software that's been developed by humans over many years is full of technical debt as well, so therefore it's fine. And I think that's a real problem, because this is an opportunity with AI and the power we've got with AI and the abundance of kind of the opportunity to deliver huge amounts of code. Well, why don't we do it better this time? Why do we need to say, well, we always had technical debt, therefore technical debt is fine?
I mean, isn't the issue, I'm not an engineer, so if I get over my skis here, just stop me. But my understanding is, like, because I'm a product person, right? So I've definitely been the person who's gone to my team and said, hey, change in direction, and I'll try to give context and also, like, thank you for the thing you've already built, but we talk to customers and all that stuff. But when I say we're changing direction, they're going to look at the code, and they're going to say, oh, we can reuse that, we can't reuse that. But if I'm vibe coding with Replit or Lovable, it's not a human, it doesn't have that it's not rational. It's a guessing machine, fundamentally. And, and it's going to, I don't even know what it's doing. Like, I'm not even technical enough to, like, go into the code personally. Others are, who are using these vibe coding tools. But I don't know what it's doing, and so is it creating dead ends, and vibe coding tools have a concept of refactor? I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of the things that the guy from Replit was saying, that we've got our new Agent 3 and that we're addressing these problems, but I've used Agent 3 and it does the same stuff. You get 90% of the way there, and then to get that last 10%, you'll bang your head against it, you're going round and round in circles, you're changing something over here and it breaks something over here that you don't even know about until later. There's occasions where you ask it to do something and it goes away and spends an hour, burns for a whole load of tokens, and then comes back and says, I've done it, and you go and check and it's not done anything.
Can I tell you right now, I've seen it's OpenAI that right now, I've seen this a few times on LinkedIn just recently, where they're sending, I think maybe even in the mail, like awards to people who have, like, used 1 million tokens. And I'm like, that's not the thing we should be celebrating, is how many tokens you used, how much water you drained from a swamp, or emissions, all that stuff. It's like the ROI. So I saw the Glean CEO on stage, and he said, he acknowledged, actually, he said, we're beyond a prototype. Now, Glean's a different company than Lovable and Replit, but he said, we're very focused on real results for customers. That was his line on stage. I believe it. But the notion that we're beyond a prototype, like, we were definitely I'm sure a lot of your customers were like, what's my AA strategy? And it was like, let 1,000 prototypes bloom. We're not quite in that phase right now. I also like the line from the Lovable CEO that we saw together, where he said, it's just memorable, it'll stick with me. Demo, not memo, right? And so I think that these tools are excellent for that. And I know that's changing product management in pretty fundamental ways, and designers too, and the engineers can be designers, and all that's all blurring together now with demo, not memo.
So I think that we are currently at a stage of AI evolution where we're at good enough. It's good enough. And that's a very dangerous place to be, because you need humans to be able to take what the AI is producing and turn that into something that's going to be not good enough, but production ready, something your customers are going to want to use and want to keep coming back to. and that your competitors aren't doing better. So with the vibe coding, it's good enough to get something out and prototype and put in front of users and say, yeah, here's all that your board right for. I think the demo, not memo, is, well, if you want to change something in the company, don't bring it to the board as a memo. Actually build it, take it and show what it can do. And it's absolutely brilliant for that, absolutely brilliant. But the problem is, how do you take that and put it in production? What you don't do is use what you've delivered for your demo, you take it to the engineering team and you build it properly.
And when you do that, if someone brings you a demo, not a memo, for one of your clients, are you building from the code base that was written by Replit, Lovable, any of those tools, or are you really just saying, that's cool, we're going to start from scratch?
So we would build from scratch, and I think that's we're in an inflection point, and that isn't going to be forever, but right now we would build it properly from scratch. And I think it's not going to be very long before...
Would you use things like Claude Code while building it from scratch?
Yeah, sure. We have a development team in Vietnam, 100 people, and they're all using AI agents to help with coding. If you're not doing that, then you're going to be slower. But I've also read a lot of studies that say actually when the developers that do use those assistants, coding assistants, they're actually slower because of the work slot, because what comes out is good enough but not great. And so how do you take that and mean that you're not going to create more work for people to clean up the mess?
More technical debt. I mean, this is exactly why I think I told you I had an anonymous CTO come on the show, and this is what he wanted to talk about, and he felt like he couldn't say it publicly because it doesn't fit the narrative right now, but basically that AI coding is great, but it creates lots of technical debt. It creates humans who don't even understand what's happened in some cases if you're not very, very, very careful. That was his take. I don't think that's the majority take, but it sounds like you're agreeing with some of that at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that unless you know what you're looking at, it very quickly overcomplicates things and builds in stuff that you just don't need, and it's very hard to maintain. If you keep building more and more complex stuff on top of complex stuff, then before long you have something that you can't maintain. If you're a business and you've delivered something that your customers love, and you want to keep the traction, you want to keep generating more content or more features for your customers, which they expect, but you can't because what you started with was full of technical debt and you can't build on it, then very quickly you're going to start losing that traction. People are going to start going elsewhere, and that really promising business that these non-technical founders that we work with, they've got great ideas, and it's such a disservice to them to be building something that gets them to a point and all that promise is there, and then it all evaporates because they can't build on it.
Artium, where I launched this podcast originally before I took it independent, that's a lot of what we would do. We would work with a lot of growth stage startups especially, and it's sort of almost by definition, by the time you hit growth stage, you've tried 1,000 things, or 10, whatever, things. You found the one thing that works, now you've got 9 things that don't, you got to, get rid of them or rationalize them. You've got tech debt because of all that. And so, do they have efficient CI/CD pipelines? We would make sure we focused on that, as well as what's the new product that you want to build. On opening night, we saw there were 2 sort of big sponsored events that we saw before where there was an actual real interview with the CEO of Lovable. The second one was Visa, a senior vice president, I forget his title, talking about stable coins and Visa's like investing in the creator economy. This is me. I stopped by their booth and they took a bunch of photos of me and me and my creator stuff. But they're very focused on creators, and they were talking about, non-ironically, talking about Web3. I was frankly shocked to hear that phrase uttered non-ironically on the keynote stage. Not that I don't believe in stable coins and crypto. I think there's actually a lot of really interesting stuff happening there.
I think the guy from Visa was talking about where you can almost give away part of your future earnings. So people invest in you now, then they can take some...
smart contracts and the like, I think is what he was alluding to.
Sure, yeah, which is really great. And I think that there's a lot of hype, or has been a lot of hype around Web3 and blockchain, and I think that one of the biggest problems actually for blockchain and the capabilities that it can bring is Bitcoin, because when people think of blockchain, they just think of Bitcoin, and what is Bitcoin? It's a glorified investment platform that people are they're just using it for that. It's a way to make a quick buck.
The greater fool theory.
Sure, yeah, and I would say, well, I've been saying that for years, and if I'd invested in it a long time ago, then I would probably have been saying something very different. But
I don't think it's for me and you. Like, you live in the UK, I live in the US, but if you're in Argentina, if you're in another place where there's frequently hyperinflation, I think it's much Bitcoin specifically, I think is a much stronger use case in those places than. So I think that's part of. I try to check myself when I'm like, oh, this thing is. I do think it is based on the greater fool theory. Like, you buy it because you hope number go up, but also, if you live in a place with currency that's, loses value all the time, maybe that's okay.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm not going to sit here and tell people they're wrong for investing because a lot of people made a lot of money. But I think that my point is that has almost obscured the benefits that the technology can bring, and it's been a big focus on that, and that hype around Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies have kind of obscured or diminished the benefits that can be brought by the technology in other really important areas.
I mean, I didn't get enough detail from what Visa is trying to get me to do. I did go to their booth. I got these cool photos and boomerang shots and all this creator activation that they had. Or they're clearly investing in the creator economy, trying to get creators paid more. I did appreciate that he's talking about getting creators paid more, just specifically on podcasting. While I was here, this was not, I think, at Web Summit. Meta announced that they want more podcasters to post stuff on threads. They want to be the de facto place where conversation around podcasts happen. And my attitude was kind of like, okay, I don't know, just pay us. Just pay us. Like I was in the New York Times during the pivot to video, and so I've seen this. Like, fundamentally, I think what creators need is like to get paid well for what they do, because it's really not easy. Subscribe and like. Anyway, so I appreciate that Visa are actually talking like real dollars and cents here. You've been to a bunch of these web summits, so you've seen various hype cycles. How does this year compare to previous ones you've been to?
This is probably one of the biggest hype bubbles I've seen. Right, I've just said bubble, right, because I'm pretty confident that AI is a bubble, and I think
likewise.
I think that the notion of where we're at doesn't sit with where people are saying we're at. We're good enough at the moment, and I think that people are selling it as the answer, and I don't think it is the answer. I mean, I'm not saying that all AI solutions, the agentic stuff, Glean, for example, with their agentic AI solutions, if it's delivered well with people that understand the problems and can go in and build it to fit around a business and their data, more importantly their data, right, then I think that it can work well. But I think that most people don't have that luxury, and people are being pressured into taking AI or finding an AI and then trying to find a problem for it, and they're losing their money. They're getting very poor return on investment.
Do you think that's going to change? Like, do you think the cost of tokens will go down significantly over time, or people will just be willing to pay more? Because to me, that's where the bubble gets dangerous. Is if like all the valuations are really premised, I think, on if the cost of tokens, like right now is very expensive, your ROI is not great, which is different than software in the past where like you had economies of scale. Now like every token you burn there's actual electricity and water, and that's physics, and physics is kind of hard to change. There's people talking about data centers in space and nuclear energy and stuff like that maybe that has an effect, probably not this year, soon, maybe, I hope. But are you seeing in the stuff that you're building, are you seeing ways to either keep token costs really low, or do you think that the cost will go down and that, yes, a bunch of companies are going to go out of business, but there'll be a long-term future here where this is affordable, and the ROI actually will be there?
In terms of the cost of tokens, I think that it's going down at the moment. Right? It goes down all the time, and I think that it's not necessarily the cost of tokens, but what you can do with one token is increasing. It's an exponential curve. I think the stats I've seen is that every 7 months the amount of work that an LLM can do doubles in terms of the number of hours, equivalent human hours. It doubles, and you can just leave it running for, I think it's 4 hours at the moment.
This is why I saw the Manus CEO, and he was talking about in the future there would be every person he thinks is going to have this. Pitching his own book, right? But like he thinks every person is going to have their own agent doing research for like 24 hours at a time on some very complicated problem, and it'll just run, and or you can have some every night it'll run, I don't know, whatever you learn that day, and it'll, I don't know, teach you something new in the morning or something like that. But that was the sort of future he was starting to talk about.
Sure, and I think that's happening, right? So I don't think there's any concern about that. I think that the biggest problem that we've got is what do we get it working on? I think that's the problem. People can throw something at it. It doesn't really matter how much many tokens it takes, it's just not going to be able to achieve what they need it to achieve. And that might be because of a data problem. It may be because it's not been set up correctly with the right prompts. It may be that no one sat there and actually understood the business problem and built something that's actually going to solve that business problem. I think that's the real issue that we have at the moment, is the application, the execution, rather than the cost. You can have something that you can have all the money in the world and throw some problem at AI that's poorly defined with poor data, and it's never going to solve it, no matter how many tokens you can afford to buy.
All right. How are the vibes this year? Forget about all the tech stuff for a second. What kind of fun have you gotten into?
It's not as much fun as as previous years. I'm very busy at the moment. I've been working during the day as well as going to the talks. But I am planning to go out tonight. It's Friday, Thursday. No more.
So you're allowed to forget what day of the week it is on the last day of a conference like this. I have no idea what time zone I'm in. I know I'm in Europe. You know how I know I'm in Europe? Because the produce, the fruit, the vegetables, oh my God, is remarkable. And also, Web Summit treats media so unbelievably well. Like it's corrupting, and I know that. But they gave me this media pass. They are like feeding me. I'm like a stuffed goose here, and it's because Patty and Web Summit like really want media to be here, and so they give me this gold badge, different color, and so I walk around and people just stop me because they say, "Oh my God, media! We want you to interview our founder, our early stage startup," and they've been trained to look for this yellow badge. But you also said, when I asked you for a couple things that excited you this week, you did mention that there was beer in all the strategic locations.
Absolutely, yeah. I've seen a self-service beer as well. It's high tech, right? At a tech conference.
Have you seen the robots here? There's like some humanoid robots walking around. I walked up to it and I put my hand out to see if it would slap me 5 or something, and it didn't. But it looked at me. Well, looked. You know what I mean? Like creepy.
Do you know what? I've been looking for them. I haven't found them.
There's 2 robots that I've seen. One is very humanoid. It's about this tall, like 4 feet tall, and silver. I forget what company it is, frankly. Arms and legs, the whole thing, walking, not, I wouldn't say gracefully, but walking and pointing. And then there was another one that was more like the delivery robots, kind of like R2-D2, but with arms. And it was doing like the Macarena or something. I'm like, okay, we've taught robots the Macarena.
So I haven't seen any this time, but Paige, who I'm with, she saw one and it fell over and stayed on the floor.
Perfect. She have video of that?
She has a photo. I saw...
So that's an excellent, that's almost like 2 on the nose, the metaphor there for some of what we just talked about.
I saw a video actually while I was here on Instagram. It was a guy that had spent $80,000 on a robot to see what it could do. And the first clip is it running into a mirror and smashing the mirror, and then it gets it to cook him an omelette. Okay, well, let's cook an omelette. So the robot very carefully cracks the eggs. It can do that. It's obviously been trained. Let's crack some eggs, right? So it cracks the eggs into the frying pan, and then the first thing it does is, it's got this frying pan and just tips it all over the floor, and then slips over the egg on its legs going everywhere, and it ends up on its backside on the floor because it fell onto its cooked eggs. Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. I mean, the most successful robot of any of the robots right now is Waymo, self-driving cars. Like I don't know if you've seen them in the UK or been to San Francisco or Austin. They don't have them in New York. I think New York because of snow and other things, and also just frankly, jaywalking in New York City is crazy. But in San Francisco and in Austin, where I've seen them, it's remarkable. And that's a robot. We just don't think of it as a robot. But the one that's making eggs, you can't make an omelet without cracking some eggs, doesn't know what an omelet is. Again, it's like a guessing machine, but now it has arms. So I'm sure it can be trained to make an omelet. That seems like a repetitive task that a machine should be good at. But I don't know. With all the talk, we just talked about AI agents. Now AI agents are getting bodies. What are your thoughts on sort of general purpose, the Jetsons, basically? They're trying to build Rosie.
Yeah, and I think that we're way off. And I think that the reason is because we're just good enough at the moment, and so it's good enough for a demo. You can get up on stage at a conference and say, make me an omelette, and you've trained it so hard so you can do this live demo. But then when you're in a house, it's going to run into a mirror and smash it day one, and that's where we're at. And I think that's the same as vibe coding. Right? It's the same concept. It's good enough for a demo, but if you then release that into production on day one, it's going to mess everything up, and you're going to get in the press for upsetting your customers, and you're going to lose all your traction.
Yeah, back to self-driving cars, I think some of it is just like a tiny little edge case with a car that's driving millions of miles, or a fleet of cars driving millions of miles. Like a woman who was killed by an Uber self-driving car a bunch of years ago. As I understand what happened, the reason why she was struck and killed is it was at night in Arizona, I believe. She was walking a bicycle. She wasn't on the bicycle. And so I think that the car, quote unquote, saw a bicycle, probably assumed a certain velocity of that bicycle, but she was walking it. And then so sadly she was struck and killed. And that's probably, 0.0001 edge case, but multiply that by millions of miles and like it's going to happen. And then we have the whole ethical part of like, if a robot does it, even if they do it less frequently than a human, like maybe we leave that aside. But like these edge cases are real, and like, I don't know, was it trained on what a mirror is or all that stuff?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that what people could say is that there's many more people get killed by cars driven by humans, right? And I think that problem of self-driving cars has been around for a long time. That isn't a generative AI problem. We're talking decades of research. And then in terms of the technology needed, I think it's LiDAR, right? LiDAR is what you need. In Europe, or certainly in the UK, that hasn't been legal on the roads up until now. But I think that's changing next year, so it won't be long before we have these self-driving cars in the UK as well. So it's spreading out, and I think that the reason that's happening is because it's mature technology that's been thoroughly tested with millions of miles. But we're not in that position with generative AI. People talk about AI as if it's new, because generative AI is new, and it is, as of yet, between 5 and 50% of the time it's wrong, but it's really good at convincing you that it's right. And I think that's one of the big problems, is that's why we're in this hype and we're in this bubble, because it's very good at convincing everyone that it's right, and people haven't quite cottoned on to the fact yet that actually it's not right. And when I deploy it into production in my business, actually I'm creating more work for my people, or I'm upsetting my clients because they're getting a bad experience.
AI is like that very confident man that will walk. I don't know if you've seen these things, like men will interview for jobs that they're not qualified for, and for whatever reason, women generally or not as frequently will. Yeah. And I think AI has been trained by a lot of dudes. So whether that's correlation or causation, I have no idea. Last thing for you, we're in Europe. I live in the States. Like, are there any general European tech? You just taught me something new about LiDAR not being legal on the streets of Europe. I didn't know that. Are there any other things that make the European tech scene unique or different, or that maybe an American audience should know?
But there's a huge focus in the EU. So UK isn't in the EU anymore, but
famously not in the UK. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. But there's a big focus on data protection and what happens with the data, and then there's a big focus around AI and all the regulations around what companies can do with AI, which I think is not there in the US. But I think that there are pros and cons, right? I think if you put a load of red tape around something, then you're going to hold it back in bad ways, but also in good ways as well. So I don't know. It's different approaches.
Tom, thanks so much. This has been really fun. I think we should go find that available beer that you called out as being so.
Yeah. Let's go self-service and beer.
All right. Well, that's Tom Haworth and I, Dan Blumberg. We're here at Web Summit in Lisbon. This has been a special live edition of Crafted from Maria Croissant, the Croissant Studio here in Pavilion 2 at Web Summit 2025 in Lisbon.